Romeo and Juliet additional questions and answers. I answer the following questions in a word, a phrase, or a sentence each. Question 1. Who, according to Romeo, teaches the torches to burn bright? Answer, Juliet. Question 2. To what does Romeo compare the women in the room other than Juliet? Answer, to crows. Question 3. What does Romeo intend to do after the measure is done? Or what does Romeo want to do as soon as the dance is over? Answer, Romeo intends to dance with her or at least touch her hand in greeting and make his blessed. Question 4. What, according to Romeo, will happen when he touches Juliet's hand? Answer, Romeo imagines that his coarse hand will be blessed when he touches Juliet's hand. Question 5. What, according to Romeo, was not seen by him until he saw Juliet? Answer, Borneo had not seen what true beauty was until he saw Juliet. Question 6. What does Juliet ask the loving, black-browed knight to do? Answer, Juliet asks the loving, black-browed knight to bring her Romeo to her. Question 7. When does Juliet want Romeo to be set up in heaven with the stars? Answer, Juliet wants Romeo to be set up in heaven with the stars after her death. Question 8. Why does Juliet call Romeo day in the night? Answer, Juliet calls Romeo day in the night because his presence will shine out against the darkness. Question 9. Who will come gliding on the wings of the night? Answer, Romeo. Question 10. What does Juliet want Romeo to be after her death? Answer, Juliet wants Romeo to be set up in heaven amidst the stars. Question 11. How does Juliet want Romeo to be immortalized? Or how, according to Juliet, would Romeo be immortalized to the world? Answer, Juliet wants Romeo to be immortalized as stars in heaven. Question 12. Why will the world be in love with night? Answer, Romeo will make the face of heaven so fine that the world will fall in love with night. Question 13. Why will people stop paying attention to the sun? Answer, after being cut into little stars, Romeo will make the face of heaven so fine that the world will stop paying attention to the sun. Question 14. For, never saw true beauty till this night. What does true beauty refer to? Or whom does the phrase true beauty refer to in Romeo and Juliet? Answer, Juliet's beauty. Question 15. How does Juliet hang on the cheek of the knight? Answer, like a rich jewel in an Ethiopia's ear. Question 16. When, according to Romeo, would his hand be blessed? Answer, when Romeo touches Juliet's hand in the dancing hall. Question 17. Whose rude hand would be made blessed by touching Juliet's hand? Answer, Romeo's rude hand would be made blessed when it touches Juliet's hand. Question 18. Who is whiter than new snow on a raven's back? Or who, according to Juliet, is whiter than new snow? Answer, Romeo. Question 19. Who is compared to a rich jewel in an Ethiopia's ear? Answer, Juliet. Question 20. Who is compared to a snowy dove? Or whom does the phrase snowy dove refer to? Or who looks like a snowy dove to Romeo? Answer, Juliet. Question 21. Whom does Romeo address as yonder lady? Answer, Juliet. Question 22. Who, according to Juliet, would all the world be in love with at night? Answer, Romeo. Question 23. Who, according to Juliet, would make the face of heaven so fine? Answer, Romeo. Question 24. When would people not worship the garish sun, according to Juliet? Answer, after Juliet's death, when Romeo goes to heaven as a star, he will make heaven so fine that people will stop worshipping the garish sun. Question 25. What does Juliet teach to burn bright? Answer, Juliet teaches the torches to burn bright. Question 26. Who will come gliding on the wings of the night? Answer, Romeo. Question 27. When, according to Juliet, would all the world be in love with night? Answer, Juliet believes that Romeo, after being set up among the stars in heaven, will make the face of heaven beautiful and charming. Then, the whole world would fall in love with night. Question 28. Who, according to Romeo, seems to hang upon the cheek of the night? Answer, according to Romeo, Juliet seems to hang upon the cheek of night, like a jeweled earring hanging against the cheek of an Ethiopian lady. Question 29. Whose beauty, according to Romeo, is too rich for use? Answer, according to Romeo, it is Juliet's beauty that is too rich for use. Question 30. After the dance is over, Romeo intends to A. Meet and talk to Juliet, B. Touch Juliet's hand, C. Watch Juliet's place of the stand. Answer, B. Touch Juliet's hand. Question 31. Who is compared to crows by Romeo? Answer, Romeo compares Juliet to a white dove and the other ladies in the hall to a flock of crows. Question 32. When does Juliet expect Romeo to come? Answer. Juliet expects Romeo to come in the night. Question 33. Who, according to Juliet, will lie upon the wings of the night? Answer. According to Juliet, Romeo will lie upon the wings of night and come gliding to her. Question 34. Where, according to Juliet, will Romeo lie upon? Answer. According to Juliet, Romeo will lie upon the back of a raven. Question 35. Who, according to Juliet, is whiter than new snow? Answer. According to Juliet, Romeo is whiter than new snow on the back of a raven. Or Romeo looks whiter than snow on the back of a raven. Question 46. Who, according to Juliet, is day in the night? Answer. According to Juliet, it is Romeo who is like day in the night. Question 47. When does Juliet want Romeo to be cut out in little stars? Answer. Juliet wants Romeo to be cut out in little stars after her death. Question 48. What does Juliet want Romeo to be cut out into after her death? Answer. After her death, Juliet wants Romeo to be cut out into little stars. Question 49. What, according to Juliet, will Romeo make so fine? Answer. Once Romeo is set up in heaven as a star, he will make the face of heaven so fine or beautiful and charming. Question 50. When Romeo shines like a star in the face of heaven, the world will, blank, according to Juliet. A. Worship the garish sun. B. Fall in love with night. C. Keep staring at heaven. Answer. B. Fall in love with night. Question 51. When, according to Juliet, would all the world be in love with night? Answer. According to Juliet, when Romeo is set up as a star in the sky, he will make the face of heaven so fine that the world would be in love with night. Question 52. When would the world pay no worship to the garish sun, according to Juliet? Answer. According to Juliet, the world will pay no worship to the garish sun, only when the face of heaven looks fine. Question 53. Whom does Juliet associate with the coming of the night? Answer. Juliet associates Romeo with the coming of the night. Question 54. Whose beauty, according to Romeo, is too rich for use? Answer. According to Romeo, Juliet's beauty is too rich for use. Romeo and Juliet additional questions and answers. 2. Answer the following questions in a paragraph of 80 to 100 words each. Question 1. How does Romeo glorify Juliet's flawless beauty? Or how does Romeo describe Juliet? Or how does Romeo describe Juliet's beauty? Or how is Romeo mesmerized by the beauty of Juliet? Or Juliet's beauty was too rich for use. How does Romeo describe it? Answer. The moment Romeo catches sight of Juliet, he is enchanted with her flawless beauty. Immediately he exclaims in wonder and says that she teaches the torches that have lit up the room to burn bright. Then noticing her conspicuous brightness in the night, he says that she appears like a precious jewel hanging in the ears of an Ethiopian. Finally, seeing that she outshone every other lady in the room, he says that she was like a snowy white dove trooping with crows. He tells himself that he had never felt so much in love because he had never seen anyone truly beautiful like Juliet until that night. Question 2. How does Juliet want people to forget the shining sun? Why? Answer. Juliet was eager to be with Romeo. So she invokes both the night and Romeo to come along with it so that he comes to her unseen by others. She believes that Romeo is day in the night to her and hence his presence alone will make her night bright to her. Then, once she is possessed by Romeo, her love will have been realized. Later, after her death, she wants the night to set up Romeo amongst the stars so that he will make the face of heaven beautiful and make the people forget the shining sun. This way she wants their love to be immortalized. Question 3. Does Romeo claim to have never seen true beauty till he saw Juliet? How does he justify this statement? Or why does Romeo say he never saw true beauty till that night? Explain. Or how did Romeo express his love for Juliet? Or, forswear it, sight for I ne'er saw true beauty till this night. Why does Romeo feel so? Explain. Answer. Romeo and Juliet happen to see each other for the first time in the hall where the dancers have gathered. The moment Romeo sets his eyes on Juliet, he is so charmed by her beauty that he stands apart and rapturously praises her beauty. It is night and the room is lit with torches. Romeo is overwhelmed by the beauty of Juliet and so he exclaims and says that Juliet is brighter than the blaze of the torches. Next, he compares Juliet to a jeweled earring hanging against the cheek of an African. He then praises her beauty likening Juliet to a white dove in the midst of a flock of crows. He tells himself that he had never felt so much in love because he had never seen anyone truly beautiful like Juliet until that night. Romeo is so overwhelmed by her beauty that he tells himself that when that dance is over, he will watch her where she stands and will touch her hand and make his coarse hand blessed. Question 4. Why, according to Juliet, would all the world stop paying worship to the garish sun? Explain. Answer. Juliet, who has married Romeo in secret, is waiting impatiently for the arrival of night and along with it her love, Romeo, when their marriage will get consummated. Now, Juliet is intensely in love with Romeo and feels passionate for him to possess her so that she can own love. But the day appears to be moving very slowly and she apparently blames the sun for delaying her union with Romeo. Secondly, her natural longing to be with Romeo makes her blame the sun for being lurid and obtrusively bright once the night arrives, and along with it Romeo, their love gets consummated. After her death she expects Romeo to go to the heavens like a star. She believes that her Romeo will make the face of heaven so fine that the whole world will fall in love with night. Question 5. How is the intensity of love between Romeo and Juliet brought out in the poem? Our feelings of Romeo and Juliet for each other are expressed with intensity. Discuss. Answer. The intensity of love between Romeo and Juliet is brought out in Juliet's soliloquy in which she addresses Romeo as day in the night. She imagines night like a bird and believes that Romeo will come gliding on the wings of a night like new snow on a raven's back. Then, addressing the night as gentle night and black-browed night, she implores it to bring her Romeo to her. Next, she asks the night to set Romeo up in heaven as a star so that he will make the face of heaven beautiful and charming. She hopes that when that happens, all the world will be in love with night and will not pay attention to the over-bright or lurid sun. In short, love belongs to Juliet now that she is married, but she does not own it, and she can't own love until Romeo possesses her. That is why there are so much longing and impatience in her request tonight. Question 6. How does Juliet express her love for Romeo? Or how does Juliet express her feelings about Romeo? Answer. The intensity of love between Romeo and Juliet is brought out in Juliet's soliloquy in which she addresses Romeo as day in night one. She imagines night like a bird and believes that Romeo will come gliding on the wings of the night like new snow on a raven's back. Then, addressing the night one as gentle night 7 and black-browed night, she implores it to bring her Romeo to her. Next, she asks the night to set Romeo up in heaven as a star so that he will make the face of heaven beautiful and charming. She hopes that when that happens, all the world will be in life with the night and will not pay attention to the overbright or lurid sun. Question 7. Why does Juliet want Romeo to be cut out in little stars? Answer. Once Juliet gets her Romeo, she does not fear death. Like all mortals, if she dies, Juliet begs fate to set him in heaven with the stars. His presence will make the face of heaven so beautiful that the world will fall in love with night 7, and the sun will no longer be worshipped. It also implies that their love will end in their tragic death because of the enmity that exists between the two families. Consequently, the world will come to know about the tragic death of the two lovers and thus Romeo will be immortalized. Question 8. How does Juliet glorify her love for Romeo through her address tonight? Answer. Soon after her marriage to Romeo, Juliet comes home and waits anxiously for the arrival of the night so that their love is consummated. She implores night to come soon and along with it bring her Romeo. Once she gets her Romeo, she does not fear death. Like all mortals, if she dies, Juliet begs fate to set him in heaven with the stars. His presence will make the face of heaven so beautiful that the world will fall in love with night, and the sun will no longer be worshipped. It also implies that their love will end in their tragic death because of the enmity that exists between the two families. Consequently, the world will come to know about the tragic death of the two lovers and thus Romeo will be immortalized. Romeo and Juliet additional questions and answers. 3. Answer the following questions in about 200 words each. Question 1. Romeo and Juliet provides an insight into the use of poetic devices in expressing human feelings. Explain. Answer. In this lesson, there are two soliloquies, one by Romeo and the other by Juliet. The first soliloquy is taken from Act 1, Scene 1 and the second from Act 3, Scene 2 of Romeo and Juliet 1, a romantic tragedy by William Shakespeare. The language used by Shakespeare in these soliloquies is exceptionally creative and provides an insight into his use of poetic devices in expressing human feelings. In Act I, Scene V, Romeo is attending a dance party in disguise, as it is hosted by old Lord Capulet. Romeo is seen gazing at some dancers on the dance floor. When Romeo sees Juliet, he is so fascinated by her beauty that he asks a servant who the lady is. When the servant tells him that he does not know who she is, Romeo stands apart and rapturously praises her beauty. In this soliloquy, one witnessed the ebullient outpourings of a dreamy, young lover who has fallen in love with a beautiful, young lady. At first sight, Shakespeare captures both the excitement and wonder the lovers feel on this occasion, in an extraordinary language which abounds in poetic devices. Line 1 is hyperbolic. The use of hyperbole is quite appropriate in this context because it is the voice of a young lover who sees before him a beautiful girl who symbolizes his aesthetic sense of what beauty ought to be like. In line 2, Juliet is likened to an earring, thus making it a simile. The earring hangs upon the cheek of Night. Here, Night is personified as a black lady. Thus, we see the use of personification as a device. The meaning is stretched further in the next line, and thus in lines 2 and 3, we see the use of enjambment as a poetic device. Enjambment refers to the running over of the sense and grammatical structure from one verse line or couplet to the next without a punctuated pause. The extended meaning is expected to further highlight the beauty of Juliet, using a sharp contrast in the description of the personified Night as an Ethiopian lady's earring. We find another instance of enjambment in lines 5 and 6. Dove is a symbol of love and a snowy dove is a symbol of peace. This highlights the pristine love of the two young lovers. The snowy dove is trooping with crows is again a sharp contrast between the other ladies in the hall and the brightness of Juliet. This contrast is to present a striking visual spectacle before the audience. Thus, the whole stretch of this soliloquy is an extended metaphor expressing the emotional intensity of a lover who has fallen in love at first sight. In the next two lines, in the phrases "my rude hand" and "my heart," we find the use of synecdoche. The word "rude" is tactile imagery. In the last line, the word "beauty" is a metaphor for Juliet. Finally, in the sentence "did my heart love till now?" we find Romeo's realization that his love for Rosalind was only infatuation, a sensual feeling for a lady and devoid of all emotions, whereas now he is in the throes of real love. The next soliloquy is by Juliet, Act 3, Scene 2. In this scene, Juliet is now waiting for Romeo. In this beautiful speech, we begin to understand the fullness of Juliet's love. In the first line, Juliet is addressing Night as an entity. Night is personified. Thus there are two poetic devices used here, an apostrophe and personification. The poet wants to highlight Romeo's brightness as seen by Juliet when he comes to visit her at the night. In line 1, "Come, night, come, thou day in the night," there is a form of parallelism called asyndeton. It is a form of verbal compression which consists of the omission of connecting words between clauses. Next, Juliet calls Romeo's day in night, which is a metaphor. In the second line, Night is personified as a bird. In the next line, the bird is mentioned as a raven, and Romeo's brightness or white complexion is compared with new snow on the raven's back. Here, there is a simile. In the fourth line also, Night is personified. Juliet describes the Night as having black eyebrows, like a human being. Finally, in line 7, we see personification in the phrase, "face of heaven." In line 8, we see the use of metonymy in the phrase, "all the world will be in love with the night." It means to say that all the people in the world will be in love with night. Thus Shakespeare uses emotive language to associate it with the theme of love to demonstrate Romeo's love, feelings for Juliet and to create drama. Thus one can undoubtedly say that Romeo and Juliet provides an insight into the use of poetic devices. Question 2. Juliet's love for Romeo finds an expression of exaggeration. Explain. Answer. It would be very unfair to Shakespeare's mastery of poetic art and also to Juliet's characterization if we were to conclude that Juliet's love for Romeo finds expression in exaggeration. It is worth noting that both the actions, Romeo meeting Juliet in the dance hall and Juliet waiting for Romeo, happen at night. Secondly, both the lovers are young, innocent, dreamy, and inexperienced in love. Both of them have entered a new world, and until their love for each other is secured through consummation, the playwright cannot show them in any other mood other than portraying their longing for each other in emotive language. Moreover, both of them have fallen in love at first sight, and naturally, their emotional outpourings must contain a description of their physical beauty. Since it is a play, the playwright has to make his language overcharged with emotion so as to dramatize the situation. Naturally, Juliet's language is hyperbolic. Though hyperbole is generally defined as exaggeration, it is not in the ordinary sense. Here, hyperbole is a poetic device and it has been appropriately used for enhancing the dramatic effect. One must also remember that plays are meant to be performed. Therefore, while reading a play, one must also visualize the action. Therefore, whatever Juliet says is not an exaggeration but the emotional outpourings of a young lady who has met her lover for the first time, and that too only for a short time. In this context, her longing for Romeo comes out in poetic language. In Juliet's soliloquy in Act 3 Scene 2, Juliet is now waiting for Romeo. From this speech, we begin to understand the fullness of Juliet's love. She desires the act of love, not just for the physical pleasure, but because it represents for her the pinnacle of marriage. Juliet has met a lover for the first time in her life, and this experience of nascent love in an innocent, virgin maiden finds its best expression in this soliloquy. In the first line, Juliet is addressing night as an entity and night are personified. Thus there are two poetic devices used here, an apostrophe and personification. Here Shakespeare is using them for contrast and emphasis. The poet wants to highlight Romeo's brightness as seen by Juliet when he comes to visit her at the night. Next, Juliet calls Romeo day in night, which is a metaphor. In the second line, night is personified as a bird. In the next line, the bird is mentioned as a raven, and Romeo's brightness or white complexion is compared with the new snore on the raven's back. Here, there is a simile. In the fourth line also, night is personified. Juliet describes the night as having black eyebrows, like a human being. In line 7 we see personification in the phrase, face of heaven. We see the use of metonymy in the phrase, the world will be in love with the night, which means to say that all the people of the world will be in love with night in view of the situation that is being presented. Exaggeration is quite appropriate. Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. About the poet. William Shakespeare was an English poet and playwright, widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language. He is often called England's national poet and the Bard of Avon. He was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, Warwickshire, in 1564. Very little is known about his life, but by 1592 he was in London working as an actor and a dramatist. Between about 1590 and 1613, Shakespeare wrote at least 37 plays and collaborated on several more. Many of these plays were very successful both at court and in the public playhouses. In 1613, Shakespeare retired from the theatre and returned to Stratford-upon-Avon. He died and was buried there in 1616. Shakespeare wrote plays and poems. His plays, 37 in number, were comedies, histories, and tragedies. His 17 comedies include A Midsummer Night's Dream and The Merry Wives of Windsor. Among his 10 history plays are Henry V and Richard III. The most famous among his 10 tragedies are Hamlet, Othello, and King Lear. Shakespeare's best-known poems are Venus and Adonis, The Rape of Lucrece, and the Sonnets, 154 in all. Romeo and Juliet summary in English. Background. Romeo and Juliet presents the tragic story of two young lovers, Romeo and Juliet, who belong to two powerful noble families of Verona, the Montagues and the Capulets. The two noble families harbor grudges against each other and have been fighting each other as sworn enemies for a long time. The action starts with a street brawl between the servants of the two rival families, who are later joined by the heads of the families, the Montagues and the Capulets themselves. Prince Aeschylus, 5, who arrives on the scene, admonishes them, restores order, and threatens death to any member of either family found indulging in street fights in the future. Then he leaves the place, taking Lord Capulet along with him. Only Lord and Lady Montague and Benvolio, their nephew, remain there as the others depart. Lord Montague tells Benvolio that Romeo has been in a bad mood for quite a while, weeping and mooning, staying out all night but going into the house as soon as the sun rises, locking himself in his room with the curtains drawn as if to make himself an artificial night. Benvolio assures him that he will attempt to find out what is bothering Romeo. Next, we find Paris, a young relative of Prince Aeschylus, engaged in a conversation with Lord Capulet. Paris wishes to marry 14-year-old Juliet, the only daughter of the Capulets. Lord Capulet tells Paris that Juliet is yet too young to marry, but tells Paris that he will not oppose the marriage if Paris can win Juliet's consent. Incidentally, Lord Capulet invites Paris to a feast to be held at his house that evening. Meanwhile, Benvolio meets Romeo and learns that Romeo is madly in love with Rosalind, who does not love him and insists on remaining chaste. Next, we learn that Lord Capulet has given his servant a list of guests whom he has to see and ensure that they are invited to the Capulets' party that evening. But the servant cannot read the names in the list and hence asks two strangers in the street to read. The two strangers are none other than Romeo and Benvolio. Romeo reads out the names of the guests and incidentally learns that fair Rosalind, with whom he is madly in love, is also one of the guests in the party. Romeo and Benvolio decide to crash the party. As planned, Romeo and Benvolio gain entry into the party along with a retinue of masked entertainers and torchbearers. While the guests are engaged in dancing, Romeo happens to see Juliet dancing with a gentleman. Romeo is awestruck by her beauty and tries to find out from a servant who she is. It is at this juncture that Romeo says these lines. The lines spoken by Romeo are taken from Act 1 Scene V when Romeo happens to see Juliet for the first time in the party hosted by the Capulets. Both Romeo and Juliet do not know each other. Summary: Romeo's speech. Romeo stands apart and rapturously praises her beauty. His words appear to come from someone who has not seen anyone so beautiful as Juliet before. It is night and the room is lit with torches. Romeo exclaims and says that Juliet is brighter than the blaze of the torches. It implies that her brightness outshines the torches and has lit up the hall. In the next two lines again there is a reference to the darkness of the night and the brightly shining lady. Romeo compares Juliet to a jeweled earring hanging against the cheek of an African. Here again, it implies that Juliet is conspicuously seen amidst others because of her brightness. Romeo is so enchanted with her goddess-like beauty that he declares that she is too beautiful for this world and too beautiful to die and be buried. In the next line, he eulogizes her beauty saying that she outshines the other women like a white dove in the middle of a flock of crows. Romeo is so overwhelmed by her beauty that he tells himself that when that dance is over, he will watch her where she stands and will touch her hand and make his coarse hand, compared to Juliet's, blessed. Then he asks himself a question whether his heart loved anyone before that moment. Then he tells himself that if it was true then he would renounce it because he had never felt so much in love because he had never seen anyone truly beautiful like Juliet until that night. Background 2, having slipped away from his friends, Romeo lingers in Capulet's garden under Juliet's window and overhears her confess to the stars that she loves him. He reveals his presence to her and in an ardent love scene, they resolve to be married secretly. The next day, Juliet sends her nurse, of whom she has made a confidant, to make final arrangements, and the wedding is performed at the cell of Friar Lawrence, Romeo's friend. The two lovers depart hoping to meet each other in Juliet's chamber that night. Returning from his wedding, Romeo comes upon his friends, Benvolio and Mercutio, in an altercation with Tybalt, who has been seeking Romeo because of his intrusion at the ball. Tybalt does his best to pick a fight, but Romeo, remembering that now Tybalt is his kinsman, refuses to quarrel. Mercutio, however, who do not understand Romeo's softness, takes the quarrel upon himself, and when Romeo and Benvolio try to beat down their weapons is slain by Tybalt. Aroused by the death of his best friend, Romeo throws aside his lenity, slays Tybalt, and flees as the angry citizens begin to gather. Then we come to Act 3 Scene 2, where we find Juliet waiting in her father's orchard for her husband, Romeo's, arrival. Juliet, unaware of what has just happened, waits out the passing of the day. She is more impatient than ever, for that night Romeo is to come to her as her husband. At the opening of the scene, Juliet delivers an impassioned soliloquy, popularly known as Juliet's Invocation to the Night. In her soliloquy, Juliet urges the sun on to its setting in the west, so that night may arrive sooner. She longs for the shelter of darkness when Romeo can come to her unseen. The dark suits lovers, for love is blind and the beauty of lovers is enough light for them. There are 31 lines in this soliloquy but only 9 lines, lines 17 to 25, are prescribed for your study. Whereas Romeo's speech highlights the mesmerizing physical beauty of Juliet, Juliet's soliloquy highlights Juliet's intensity of love for Romeo. Summary to Juliet's soliloquy: in these 9 lines, Juliet invokes both night and Romeo as well. She addresses Romeo as day in the night, because his presence will shine out against the darkness. She visualizes night like a bird jay and believes that Romeo will come gliding on the wings of the night like new snow on a raven's back. She addresses the night appealingly, calling it gentle night and black-browed night. She implores it to bring her Romeo to her. After that, when she dies, she asks the night to take him and set him up in heaven with the stars so that he will make the face of heaven beautiful and charming. She hopes that when that happens, all the world will be in love with night, and it will not pay attention to the over-bright or lurid sun. The soliloquy is based on the unifying images of night and light. Juliet quotes this night, which by its darkness will allow Romeo's safe journey to her. The only light she needs is Romeo himself, who is day in the night. The light of the day and the garish sun offer nothing to her, they are only tedious. It is a night that is loving, for it blesses her love with its darkness and silence and lets that love shine out. Even the stars, emblems of the fate she does not recognize, seem to be good to her. Romeo will be made eternal by the stars. Juliet's speech is like singing in the face of death. Thus, Juliet hastens the coming of her wedding night. In short, love belongs to Juliet now that she is married, but she does not own it, and she can't own love until Romeo possesses her. That is why she is waiting now as impatiently as a child waits for a festival.